What's going on, guys? It's Politigamers here again, and today we're going to be bringing you a little bit of a different video. It's not going to be political, but it is going to be gamerical, if that makes any sense. We're going to be doing a review of the new Grand Strat game that just came out last Monday, a week from today, or a week ago today, Stellaris. And if you are a fan of the Grand Strat genre, like Mike very much is, and I am just kind of setting my foot into the water, making sure it's not too cold, then you probably have already known about this, but we're going to give you just our opinion on it, like we do on this channel, and kind of try and reinforce your decision on whether or not you want to pick it up. Spoiler alert, you probably do. Since this is a new sort of thing we're doing on the channel, we're going to kind of break it down into categories. First thing we're going to talk about is going to be the first thing you'll probably notice when playing the game, and that's going to be graphics. And the graphics in this game, as you're seeing right now through the screenshots, because our computers suck so much that we can't film it, the graphics are amazing. Anything you want to say about the graphics, Mike?
It is not what I would call the most graphically pleasing game in the history of any sort of video game, but it's very full of character. Like you start off and it feels spacey.
Yep.
Actual space is probably not as dusty as all this, at least not with visible dust, but it has a very singular character that makes it kind of pop. Everything that you see has a purpose to it. And as you start to learn about the game, you start seeing, oh, okay, that's what that means. This is what this means. It's all very distinctive and full of its own unique character. And I genuinely enjoy that quite a bit. I'm not a realism junkie. I don't need true-to-life graphics on a video game to enjoy it. I'm much more interested in gameplay.
But the graphics still, even if they're not true to life, they're still extremely pleasing to look at. I love just like clicking on the other empires and just like watching their little leader kind of blink and move around and stuff.
And one thing that really got me was as we found out that we were struggling running the game, especially on multiplayer, was that by turning down the graphics, you don't lose very much at all. It removes the dust particles in the galaxy, but I think that it kind of makes things a lot clearer.
Yeah. It looks more like a standard, like Total War type game.
It kind of does, yeah. It's very Paradox.
Yeah.
That's kind of all I can really say about it. It's very Paradox.
And there is one one drawback to the graphics that we will talk about. We've kind of alluded to it already, but we'll talk about that in the end when we talk over all of the drawbacks of the game, which there aren't many, but we do want to kind of keep it categorized and organized for you guys.
The ship design is absolutely phenomenal. They've got just so much to it, and being Paradox, one of my favorite things about them is they've made almost all of the modding tools, with the exception of a pro copy of Maya. You can create every single visual in the entire game. You want to make a new planet? Boom, you can do it. You want to animate a new character portrait? Bada bing, it's done.
Yeah.
You want to build an entire new model of ship? You want to do a total revamp and create the Firefly universe in Stellaris? Congratulations, you can.
And it's
you
relatively
also have way
easy.
more time on your hands than I do.
Yes. So we gave you guys a bit of a quick overview of the graphics. Obviously, there's a lot more that that could probably be said about it, but that's for you guys to find out on your own. The overall arcing verdict on the graphics is that they're fantastic, more than what's needed for the game to be playable by a long shot. And you'll certainly find yourself chuckling at some of the animations that you see.
Oh yeah, or just clicking on a pulsar star and watching it swirl as arcs of radiation just fly off the surface in swirls of light.
Yes, that's one thing. The sun's in the game. When I first, like, probably the first 5 or 10 hours of the game, I would just click on a system and stare at the sun. And I know I made Mike laugh a couple of times because I was hell-bent on populating all of the systems with blue suns in them and purple suns because they just look that cool.
Oh yes, because that's a brilliant strategy
It
and
is.
definitely worked out for you in that game.
Mm-hmm. It did. That's why we had to restart.
Yeah, that's why we had to restart that one.
But
Although it was very much so a tutorial into the game processes, not coming from 4X and grand strategy.
yes,
There is so much to learn on this game. It's not reinventing the wheel by any stretch of the imagination,
no.
but it is slightly perfecting it.
We'll go ahead and get into the gameplay of it. For those of you that are like myself and are kind of just trying to like step your way slowly into the Grand Strat game, I couldn't recommend this enough because there is a lot to it and it will at first be somewhat overwhelming for sure. But with being able to slow down the gameplay and the UI is extremely from you take another Paradox title, Europa Universalis. That game, there was no way I was even attempting to play that game, being new to the Grand Strat genre. There's just way too much going on. So many different windows open at the same time, and all this other crap. It was just too much for me. I'm used to Command and Conquer tank rushes, not all this other shit I gotta keep track of.
Politics, policies, keeping your population happy, and you've got to balance all of that while still not allowing any of your opponents to take your incredibly fertile land.
Exactly. And obviously we're Politigamers. The politics aspect of the game is unlike any other I've ever played. Now, like I've mentioned so many times, it's probably getting annoying by now. I'm not used to the Grand Strat genre, so I don't really have much of a reference to compare anything to. But any other Strat game that I've ever played with diplomacy in it, Empire, Earth, Age of Conquest, way outshines those.
Yeah, I mean, many of those games, having played a number of those myself, Empire Earth especially, the diplomacy is something like, here's some materials, don't attack me until my army gets a tiny bit bigger.
Pretty much.
But in this game, they've got different ethics for each of your empires to have. So basically, you've got militarists, capitalists, materialists, spiritualists. You can make a highly religious society and choose a government type that is a fanatical purifier. It makes it impossible to make friends with anyone, and your goal is to convert everyone or kill them.
Pretty much.
And you can spawn into a galaxy and have 3 of them as your neighbors.
So it's just going to be immediately Middle East warring status.
Which is absolutely terrifying.
Yes.
But there's those ethics, and there's those ethos and government types. But then there are these things that they introduced that were beyond brilliant, called fallen empires. And essentially, they have an incredibly unique identity all of their own. Some of them just want to watch. During the Blorg live streams for Stellaris, they were playing a single-player campaign and just going through it, and they noticed one of their neighbors, several plots of stars away from them, was getting attacked by like 4 people from all sides. And they sent a request for vision access so that they could see everything that was going on in the systems owned by this population. And then they pantomimed what that particular civilization's response would have been. Sir, we have several communications coming in from the front. What's going on? Well, 4 people have declared war. Well, what's the last guy want? He wants to watch. And it's just moments like that that make Stellaris stand out. It's a platform on which you can create stories using these personalities and these different political movements that change the structure of how the game is going to play every time you play.
Yep.
Because I believe there are, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there are 16 ethos, and you can actually create mods that generate more ethos and give them to the VI. I refuse to call it artificial intelligence because I don't believe that fits it. I believe it is a virtual intelligence. But you can give those traits to the VI and have them play according to this new government type that you've constructed. But there are 16 ethos in the base game, And then, what is it, 15 different government types?
Something like that. I think it's 18, actually.
Is it 18?
Yeah.
It's a bunch. It's just so much to the game that sits there and says, okay, you're going to spawn in, and let's say you create the biggest one. There are now 38 other empires out there. Some of them have already been out in the stars for several hundred years, and then there's you kind of sitting there just taking your first tentative steps out into the unknown. And every single one of them has their own ethos that generates an impromptu backstory that has a reason for them to be out in the stars.
Yep.
And some of them will clash with you immediately. Some of them will seek out and try to be friends and form a federation. There's just so much just to that one little tiny section of the politics of the game. So rather than just, okay, please don't hit me right now, you have to sit there and say, okay, well, what is it that you want? Does your particular race approve of slavery? And I have slaves. That's an automatic negative in every single one of our interactions.
Yep.
And so you have to consider, well, over time, you can change the ethos of your population while you're playing the game. So if you start with slaves, you can abolish slavery. If you start with allowing the purging or the ethnic cleansing of other races, you can move to disallowing that over time.
Oh, yeah.
And while that will mollify some of these NPCs that you're going up against, it will also anger some of your population, particularly if they have a trait called decadent, where they rely on slaves. And if you outlaw slavery in a society that depends on slaves, they will become angry and start a faction that either campaigns to return slavery to your society or create a war where they secede from your empire.
Yep, and then you have a recreation of the American Civil War in space.
Which was about way more than just slavery. But
oh, well, yeah.
So that's just politics.
And one thing I wanted to talk about is the procedural generation, which is amazing in this game. You'll find that a lot of systems are named the same thing, not in the same spot, but you'll find the same name of systems, and you'll occasionally find the same name of empires, but even if the empire has the same name that you've encountered before, they act completely differently.
They do, and of course you can pre-generate empires and stuff and force them to appear in a game.
Yes.
But it's not a guarantee most of the time with the procedural generation.
And I bet I haven't encountered this yet, which is great that we've already put this much time and there's still tons of things we haven't encountered. We had to get this review out. There was a part of me that wanted to just encounter everything, but I knew that would be like months down the road, and by this point you would either have purchased the game or just don't care.
Yeah, we have already put 41 hours, I think, was our total time in that multiplayer save.
Yeah. And
only encountered one endgame event. Never fought a fallen empire. We did not see an AI rebellion, although I believe we saw the starts of one.
Yeah, let's go ahead and talk about that. The weapon types in the game are ridiculous. There's like 3 different main branches. There's lasers, kinetic, and missiles. And not only that, but then you go and you can take out these spacefaring organics and take their weapons off the debris, and you can there's just so much. Like, if you want a game with a ridiculous amount of replayability and you like the strategy genre, even if you've never tried a grand strat before, for those of you out there that don't like micromanaging, there is a little bit in it, but Stellaris has introduced a ingenious mechanic that are called sectors, and you can then sector off parts of your empire and put a governor in place to just watch over it for you. Now, granted, there is a little bit of micromanaging with the spaceports in those sectors, as I've noticed the governors tend to be relatively inept at keeping up with those.
There's a mod coming out for that.
Yes, obviously, most of these things can be changed with modding, but we want to keep the review to most of the base game. So there is some micromanaging there, but with being able to alter the game speed, turn it all the way down to the slowest, where a 1 month in game takes about 3 minutes or so to pass, or 4, then you have plenty of time to micro, and you'll probably even still be sitting around waiting just a bit.
Well, that's another improvement over many strategy and grand strategy and 4X games that I've seen. You either have full-on high speed all the time. For example, StarCraft 2, where your performance is measured in how many times you click on buildings and units per minute.
Yeah, which is a little ridiculous.
Which is insane. But then you also have games like Civ, all of them.
Yeah.
Where every turn you just sit there, you click on all of your things, you check all of your cities one at a time, and then you press next turn, and you see a little tiny counter tick down, and okay, I get my next Civ in 426 clicks, and I'm going to win this war in about 25 more clicks, and it becomes monotonous, and this essentially mini game where you sit there and just put in all of this time and effort just to get a little tiny bit of pleasure back out of it. And this seeks to draw the line between the two.
Yeah.
You can outright pause it. You can turn it into turn-based and sit there and, okay, pause. And then let it proceed by a month, and then pause again, and then let it proceed by a month, and pause again. And it's as simple as touching a single key on the keyboard, much like clicking next turn. But there's also the speeds. There's 5 speeds on single player, and I believe currently only 3 or 4. It will only allow you to go to fast on multiplayer, I believe. You can click fastest, but there's no actual change in speed.
And that's probably for balancing reasons.
Not really for balancing reasons. It's to prevent the host from being a jackass.
So, bugs. Let's talk about bugs and just, like, annoying parts of the game, which this part is not going to be a very long part, because there isn't tons in the game. For the most part, I mean, I've been nothing but happy with it. But there are some slight things that I would have loved to see differently. And the very first and foremost one for me, I'm not sure, this is probably in Mike's top 2, if it's not his most as well, is the fact that you had to install you either have to install graphical mods or edit the console in order to turn down settings other than multi-sampling. The only base setting you can turn off in the options menu is multi-sampling, which for those of us that play on shit PCs because whatever reason, either you don't want to upgrade or you can't afford it or whatever, it is kind of a pain in the ass that you do have to go and do that. And that was the very first thing that kind of was a letdown about the game, but obviously with mods and stuff you can fix that, and now it runs amazingly.
Yeah, it is one of my biggest pet peeves about most games, honestly. If a game comes out and your option menu consists of 1 or 2 buttons that you can click, in this case it's 4, but just 4 options, and that's it.
Yeah.
Like, I understand that certain engines do have limitations, but I mean, if modders within, I think it was 6 hours of release, had found those options in the engine to turn those things down, why could it not be simply added as a menu option directly in there? Okay, let's turn off bloom, and then it says, hey, if you turn off dust drawing, which is the galaxy dust that's in the base game, you actually, your border empires are displayed by a specific colored dust based on the flag that you chose. If you turn off dust, your empire borders go away, and it would simply turn on the other options to make them still visible.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be relatively simple to do from a programming aspect, as far as I know.
Yeah, I'd assume so as well. With the other stuff they've been able to pull off.
There are more options in sound than there are in graphics in this game, and that bugs me. That's the problem.
That is definitely probably the biggest issue with the game by far. which isn't even that big of an issue because mods have fixed it, but since it's not in the base game, I'd feel a little bit untrustworthy if we didn't at least call them out for that. So that should be changed in Stellaris 2 because damn it, Paradox, you better make that at some point.
Yeah, in VR, so that we're sitting there like Tony Stark with a holographic computer screen sitting there touching planets and issuing orders. Ship combat.
Yes.
When you first start getting into ship combat, there is no collision. So at times, your incredibly impressive fleets that you've spent months researching and painstakingly designing in the ship designer, which is very, very cool, while being somewhat slim, it still gives you a wide degree of customization.
Oh, yeah.
However, you spend all this time looking at it and saying, I want my battleship to be cool, and, honestly, I might get a slight power increase from putting this front end on it, but this one over here looks cooler, so I'm going to change my strategy so that my ships look really cool while they're getting shot down. And then your ships get into combat, and they all bunch up on one little area of space, and then you don't get to see them anyways. And that bothered me a bit. Again, mods have addressed that, but in the base game, there wasn't any collision detecting, so they just kind of rammed into each other and went all over the place, and it was a little saddening.
And would also put a drain on our systems.
Mine handles it relatively well. There's
mine did not.
Yeah, well, I think there's a minor difference between ours.
Yeah.
Also, the UI. It takes a very long time to scroll through some of the menus. I don't like that. I believe there should be an option for mouse wheel sensitivity so that you can roll through your planets relatively quickly. Once you start getting up to that number of systems, even with sectors, you're sitting there scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, and where is that one planet that has the pop that can colonize an Arctic world? And oh my gosh, and it is clearly visible as you scroll down because every pop that's on a planet has an image that shows up in the area, and if you hover over them, it displays some of the information about them. So you can relatively quickly see it once you finally get there, but it takes so long to scroll down through it. The scroll bar on the side is so small that you have to be incredibly precise as you're clicking through it. Yep. And in a multiplayer game where perhaps you're not in charge of the speed of the game, things could be going on in the background that desperately need your attention while you're painstakingly searching through there trying to click this little tiny bar, and your scroll wheel is acting like it just took an entire bag of marijuana and still has Doritos within range of the couch. I mean, it's
a great analogy.
It's sluggish, it's responsive, and it's not as intuitive or fun as it could be. And so I think that's a very legitimate criticism.
Yeah, and I wasn't noticing that issue as much, but the second you pointed it out, I was like, they actually could work on that. You are correct.
As a Legacy 4X gamer, I've seen it done better elsewhere.
So that's probably why. But that pretty much sums up our base opinion of the game. As you can tell, we're pretty in love with it, so I think it's about time to give our final verdicts on it. Do you want to go first, Mike, or would you like me to?
Oh, by all means. You've sort of made up your mind.
All right, I'm gonna have to go with a 9 out of 10. It's not extremely perfect by all means, just like everywhere it's thoroughly impressing me, but in 90% of the things it is thoroughly impressing me, so I feel like it deserves a 9 out of 10. And if it were to have the graphical stuff in the base game, and if it were to have some better base ship combat systems, then it would easily be a 10 out of 10. But without that, I can't give it the 10 out of 10 that I'd like to.
As for me, I thoroughly am enjoying this game. We've put in 40-plus hours in multiplayer. I've put in an additional 36 or 37 hours in single player. And I have no indication at all of slowing down. This is a well-built, well-thought-out game that is respectful of the time that you want to give it, while also drawing you in and asking you to spend more time enveloped in the stars. And with those features, I have to give it a solid 8.5 out of 10. The drawbacks, of course, are what we've mentioned, and modded, the game actually jumps up to a 9.75 for me. I can't give it less than that with the mods. We've installed a couple of things called like Beautiful Battles and
oh yes, there will be a list of recommended mods in the description.
And they have cranked up the fun by several levels.
Oh yeah.
And just modded, the game is absolutely outstanding, which is why, with Paradox at the head of this, they launched the game supporting modders and the modding community. And for that alone, I probably should give them another full point, because the number of developers that are doing that these days is not high enough.
Yes. So that's our opinion on the game, guys. Go out if you like Grand Strat, or if you've been thinking about trying out Grand Strat. It's only $40 and it comes with a free DLC. Go grab it.
Also, watch the Blorg stream.
Yes, go check out some videos. If our computers didn't suck complete ass, we'd have videos of it playing right now, but
most of which would be me saying, "God damn it, Noah, why are you bad?"
exactly. That was pretty much the experience.
All right, you guys have a wonderful day. I hope to see you in our next Politigamers video.
Yes, which will probably be political and not so much gamerical. We're going to copyright that word now.
No, we're not. We don't want that word.
All right, we'll catch you guys next time.